everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about community. In particular, a community here on Creighton's campus. The College Diabetes Network, or the Diabetes Club. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 6 years old, and it's a very important part of my life and something I live with every day. Upon moving to Creighton, I found out about the Diabetes Club and immediately was interested in joining. I met with the president and vice president at Scott Shutdown, and we actually just had our first meeting a few days ago. Today I'd like to tell you a little bit about some language that we use that might be unique, show you a map of the community, and why this community is important and intellectual. The College Diabetes Network is actually a national organization that's committed to providing college students and their families with education, materials, and support during the college process. They work to inform students about making smart decisions, comfort families on their students' transition to college, and provide information about how to live your life with diabetes in a new environment. The Diabetes Club here at Creighton is an affiliate of the College Diabetes Network. That means they're registered with the College Diabetes Network, but it's its own independent club. It was started last year, just before COVID, by Demi Brown, who is a sophomore here, and she saw it as a way for people with type 1 diabetes to get together, to get to know each other and make some friends with people that share the common disease. And at the same time, it's a place where people who don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about their diabetes with everyone else to talk about it and feel comfortable, as well as kind of like a support group and a place to make some new friends. Because the Diabetes Club is a medical club and we deal with something that not everybody knows about, there's definitely some terminology, some words that need to be defined for the purpose of this video. The first of these is diagnosis stories. So when you're out and you meet somebody that you find out has type 1 diabetes, you commonly ask them, what's your diagnosis story? So last week at our first meeting of the Diabetes Club, we went around and shared those. And diagnosis stories are the story of when you were diagnosed, basically like the events leading up to it, what your blood sugar was when you were diagnosed, how old you were, what your time in the hospital was like, and things like that. It's kind of a cool way to bond, to everybody has the same story, you kind of share a laugh over the extreme events, and it's a really good way to instantly connect with someone that you know is also a type 1 diabetic. To give you some examples of diagnosis stories, and to introduce you to some members of the Diabetes Club, Demi and Allison actually submitted some short videos giving like a brief account of their diagnosis stories. Normally these are a few minutes long, but for the interest of the video, they kept it to about 30 seconds each. So that way you'll get to kind of know how that process goes, what a diagnosis story is, and get to meet a few members of the club.
Hi, my name is Demi Brown. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes the summer before my senior year. It happened when I broke out in a really painful rash, and my dermatologist finally decided to run a glucose test, and I was really high and immediately needed treatment. The difficult thing about this too is that on a regular blood panel there's not a glucose test, which can make a lot of people very, very sick. I started the College Diabetes Network here at Creighton because I felt like there were certain things about type 1 diabetes that needed to be discussed and talked about, as well as providing support for those who do have type 1 diabetes.
Hi, I'm Allison. My diagnosis story was kind of scary. So I was 2, I was really little, and my parents kept taking me to the doctors saying that I was sick, but they kept insisting that I was fine and she was just overreacting. And it got really bad one day, so she just took me to the emergency room, and they found out I had diabetes, but I was unresponsive for a few days, but luckily they caught it. Thanks, guys.
I hope those two videos give you a better idea of what diagnosis stories are. They're very important to the community that is the Diabetes Club because it's a way to, like I said before, bond with people over your story. Everybody has one, and it's just something, it's kind of fun to talk about. So thank you to Demi and Allison for being willing to share those. And with that said, now we're going to move on to talk about the next term, which is insulin pumps. The next word I'm going to talk about is insulin pump. So an insulin pump is the most important piece of equipment used when managing type 1 diabetes, but the reason it's important, specifically to the Diabetes Club, is because it's a question you'll ask somebody when you find out they have diabetes. So you'll ask them what pump they use, kind of compare to what you use, and it's just another way to get to know somebody in the Diabetes Club. Another term that's important to define when talking about the Diabetes Club is A1C. A1C is a medical term for basically your average blood sugar over about 3 months. So here I have a chart of A1Cs. You can see the green, that's obviously where you want to be. Lower green is usually where you're at if you don't have diabetes, but 6 and 7 is generally where you want to be. Yellow is okay, and then red is getting dangerous, actually. But the reason A1C is important to the Diabetes Club is because it's sort of a competition you'll have. You'll ask people what their best A1C is. So Ben Brockman, who is also in English 176, and I have a little competition going. He has me beat right now. He has the best A1C at like a 6.4. My best one was 6.6, but it's just a sort of fun competition you'll get into. To map this community, I'm going to use 2 maps. The first is going to be a map of Creighton's campus as it applies to someone with type 1 diabetes, and the second is going to be a map of a dorm room as it applies to someone with type 1 diabetes. Now, after talking to people in the Diabetes Club, everybody does it a little bit differently. Everybody lives in different halls, whether you're a freshman in Kiewit, a sophomore in McGloin, or an upperclassman that lives off campus. But I'm going to show a sample of a dorm room because it's fairly consistent what supplies you're going to have right at hand. And as far as the map of campus, everybody kind of uses the same things. The first map I'm going to talk about for this community is a map of the campus as it applies to someone in the Diabetes Club. The first area that I noted as important is Jack and Ed's. That's the small circle close to number 17 in Scott Student Center. This is important because it's a place you can pick up snacks, quick sugar, and things like that. The next thing I have an arrow towards is the Swanson mailroom. So that's the place where you're going to go to get your medical supplies shipped to and where you're going to be picking it up. Now, numbers 20 and 43, those are the dining halls. Those are important because food is very important. If you're a type 1 diabetic, you need to make sure you're eating on a schedule. And the last thing that I have that's probably the most important is number 29. That's the CHI Student Health Center. That's where you can go if you're struggling with things, or it also has the pharmacy where you can pick up your insulin prescriptions. So for my second map of the Diabetes Club, I've mapped out a dorm room as it applies to someone with type 1 diabetes. As you can see, it's very well drawn. Some call me Bob Ross. The first thing I have on this map is a supply drawer. You have a lot of supplies, a lot of medical supplies, and you need somewhere to store those, keep them out of the way, but you also need access to them regularly throughout the week. The next thing is quick access sugar. If you wake up with a low blood sugar in the middle of the night, it's really difficult to climb down a lofted bed ladder because you're shaky, dizzy. So a lot of people in the club like to keep like a juice box or something like that accessible so that you can use it in the middle of the night if you need it. The next thing I have is a fridge. You have to keep insulin cold, otherwise it expires. So the fridge is important for storage. And then snacks and water, those are important. You need snacks if your blood sugar is low, and you need water if your blood sugar is high. The last thing I have on this map is also extremely important, which is an educated roommate and one that knows about your situation, knows how to help you if something goes wrong. And that's super important because you need somebody that you can rely on if your blood sugar goes low, your blood sugar is super high, and just so they're understanding about what you're going through. So the goal of showing those 2 maps of the Diabetes Club and how they relate to Creighton is to show you our 2 main values. The first is just safety and health, and that comes from the food places, the pharmacy, and things like that, where we're basically keeping supplies, keeping food, keeping medicine, because at the end of the day, the best thing we can do is take care of ourselves. And the second is education. And that one I indicated mostly through the educated roommate part of my map. Not just roommates, but everybody. You really want everybody around you to be educated, so you feel like A, that you belong, you feel comfortable, and then B, that you feel safe and feel that if something ever happened to you, you'd have people that know how to take care of you. In his essay on intellectuals, Antonio Gramsci writes about how everyone is intellectual, whether they learn information in a classroom or they have an important position, or they're just a member of a community. He believes that everyone is intellectual because they're contributing to their community and they have a unique knowledge that they share with one another. The Diabetes Club is an example of intellectualism because everybody in the club has an extensive knowledge of their medical situation and how to keep themselves healthy. We know how to count carbs, how to bolus for insulin, and we work together to make sure that everybody is staying on top of what they're supposed to be staying on top of. We share supplies, and we can give advice on how we manage things and how we think someone else could successfully manage their diabetes. The second way the Diabetes Club pertains to the readings we've done is as a hush harbor. Now, I'm not going to compare kids having type 1 diabetes to the struggles of being an African American in American society. However, it definitely has similar functions as Carmen Keenard's group of students did in the essay that she wrote. Now, there's often a stigma surrounding diabetes. People assume type 1 and type 2 are the same thing. You'll tell someone that you have type 1 diabetes and they'll say something like, "Oh, you're not fat," or "You seem to be in really good health." But the difference between type 1 and type 2 is type 1 basically just happens. Type 2 is related to diet, family history, or genetics. However, type 1 is called autoimmune, and that basically means it just happens. There's no controlling it. So the reason the Diabetes Club is important as this sort of hush harbor is it's a place where people who really don't feel comfortable talking about what they're going through are able to share with people that do understand what's going on. They can just talk about common experiences, they can ask for advice, or just talk about what they're going through. So in that way, it's a sort of hush harbor because everybody can feel comfortable sharing what they're going through with people that actually understand. Thank you for watching my video about the Diabetes Club. If you have any more questions about the club or type 1 diabetes itself, feel free to come talk to me. The club's always looking for members that aren't diabetic who are just interested in learning more and coming out. So if you're interested in that, let me know and I'll talk to Demi. But other than that, thank you for watching and thank you for learning more about diabetes.